I think if a world was specifically built for the neurodivergent community with them in mind, you would thrive in it.
I would.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
I wouldn't struggle.
No. This is the thing. Any things that will support people. There's so many different factors to neurodivergence or neurodiversity, isn't there? You've got people with autism or ASD. When you think of the spectrum, people might think it's like a linear spectrum, like you're high or low in autism.
That's how I think. Thank you, Becky. Thanks for joining us. I'm quite excited about this chat because normally I'm talking to design directors and that's all really good and I love all those conversations. But today I'm going to just go off a bit. Haven't even got anything planned. Was chatting to Becky the other day and she was saying some seriously, we need to hear this shit. So I was like, okay, right. Can you sit down with me and just talk to me because I need to know this and the audience need to know this. So pretty chilled. Don't know where it's going to go, but I am excited. So yeah, Becky, thank you so much for joining.
No, you're welcome. You picked me right up.
Yeah, you was telling me when we were just chatting the other day on Teams, you were saying about how you started off on all of this, from your parents. I found that really interesting. Can you just wrap up quickly, how you got into psychology?
Quickly, yeah. Interestingly enough, my dad did a psychology degree and he's not in anything related to psychology now, but he's very he understands behaviours and things like that and what motivates people.
Yeah.
And my mum was an occupational therapist for kids, paediatrics, so looking at children with autism or epilepsy, Down syndrome, and kind of supporting them with their motor skills, essentially.
Yeah.
So I always really connected with that and did a lot of, when you do work experience in school and stuff, I always went to help her. And I did a bit of work in the psychology department in a school for the National Centre for Young People with Epilepsy. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. I like this. So I think since then, I always knew that I wanted to do psychology. It was just a real interest of mine. So I did that for my undergrad degree and then felt a bit disillusioned coming out of that because actually, I loved psychology, I loved the degree and I really wanted to do something in psychology, but you couldn't really get any jobs just with an undergrad. And I wanted to go and work. I didn't fancy going and studying again at the time. So I was looking around, I was like, I don't really want to do sales, I don't want to do this and that. I ended up getting into education, into a tuition company. Yeah. And that was it was all about running this tuition centre, recruiting tutors, training tutors, bringing the children into the space and tutoring them every day, pretty much. And a lot of those kids were back to my sort of origin story of autistic children and epileptic children with lots of different learning challenges that maybe didn't suit the mainstream academia. You brought them into the space and you could just see them thrive working either working years above their academic age, even though schools saying that they're not coping well, or bringing them up to where they should be just in that really supportive environment. So all of this is there's sort of common themes weaved through. And it ended up being a geographical kind of relocation that I moved up north, left that job in education, and I thought, I need to find a job. I had a 2-month notice period, so I just had to hand in my notice and sort of trust the process. And then I ended up, after saying that again, I didn't want a job in sales. I didn't want to do this and that. I ended up with a job in sales.
And that was at
Claremont.
At Claremont, which is where you are now, yeah.
Yeah. So there was
probably sales.
Awful.
Love it.
Awful. I was honestly, they would get the stats up in our team meetings and it was talk through everyone hitting target, 150% of target. You get to mine, it was 0.05% of target. So yeah, I would say it wasn't my forte.
It's good to know.
But it was the best experience to understand the business. Yeah. So to sort of step back and think, okay, it's a really creative business. I love that. And I was like, okay, maybe I need to park psychology at this point. Maybe that's just, a hobby. But then as I started to learn the business and learn the consultancy side of it, I was like, oh my God, people are so intrinsically embedded within what we do. It's all about people. It's all about psychology. Because we're creating workspaces. That's what Claremont do. It's design and build. We're creating workspaces for people, but we don't have any psychology angle here. It's all design angle.
I see, yeah.
So yeah, I went it was all or nothing into my sort of progression review thing, saying, I know I'm bad at my job.
How long had you been there when you did this?
Oh, probably a year and a half, 2 years.
Okay.
Maybe a year and a half, I think. So I was sticking it out.
Yeah, you had your feet under the desk a bit.
Yeah.
It wasn't like 3 months in. Just like, boom.
They would have been like, see you later then. So no, I tried to establish myself. I tried really hard. I was just not great at the sales thing.
Love
so
the
I went,
honesty. Love the honesty.
You'll get that. I went in and said, look, I know I'm not very good at this, but I can see a gap. You know, from understanding the business, I could see that there's a gap here in psychology, and I'd really like to be that person to fill that gap. Just give me day release. I'll go out and I'll study once a week, get my master's in organisational psychology to add a little bit of credibility to it and really understand and get those skills in critical analysis and things like that. And yeah, let's go from there. So that's
what happened.
That's what happened. We're talking like 8 years ago now, I think. So
you've been doing workplace psychologist at Claremont for 8 years?
About 7 or 8, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So now you are a workplace psychologist. You work with the designers, but just helping to make sure the spaces are human-centric.
Essentially,
is that like a really like? Is that insulting or is that about right?
It's about right. I mean, that's the thing with psychology. It's when you talk about it, people are like, oh yeah, you know, it's not groundbreaking. It's not like, oh my God, I never considered that. It just makes sense.
So what is the common thing that's really obvious but people don't think of?
For me, there's a big thing about how people interact with space, right? This is like essentially what I do. And one massive thing is if you're creating a working environment and you're putting your desks in, just orientating the desks slightly differently so people A, have a view outside and B, don't have like a circulation route walking right behind them. That's like a small little tweak and frees up so much space because those desks that have got the walking route behind them, that if people can choose where they work, they're probably not going to choose them. So you might have.
Why don't we? I do actually find that I will always gravitate to a desk that's got a wall behind me. I don't, but why do I do that?
It'll be to do with vigilance and like your innate sense of safety. Like we don't like things that we can't see behind us, especially people, because that's a threat, you know, to our hardcore DNA. So
that's completely normal.
Yeah. 100%.
I'm not the only one.
No. 100%. Actually, it's even more heightened and intense for perhaps some of the neurodivergent community. So it can be frustrating for some of us, but for some people, it can be sort of can't function.
Okay, so you tilt all the desks so they can see outside, and then people like aren't walking past them so much.
Ideally, yeah. We've got nature. Like bring in some planting and things like that to just create a little physical barrier as well. So it's small little tweaks. Interestingly enough, there's a study that was done in healthcare. So this is all about, you know, bringing different perspectives from different areas, industries, sectors, whatever. They were looking at recovery rates of people after operations or in the cancer ward. And in the rooms that they had, where people were in their recovery, again, they just changed the orientation of their bed so that they were looking out of a window. I can't remember the exact stat, but the recovery rate just dropped massively.
What?
So they're getting people out of these rooms a lot quicker and back into their homes to fully recover just by giving them the views of nature.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So
you haven't even got to do anything inside. You haven't even got to put any planting in.
I mean, that adds to it, right?
Yeah, but yeah.
Even just views of nature, like not even views, if you're in the city centre and you don't have that, imagery can sort of really help reduce your cortisol levels, your stress hormone, and make you feel more creative and happy.
Imagery. And question. Plastic plants, do they do a job or do they have to be real?
They do the job. It's up to you how the benefits you want to see from it. Okay. If you're going to be putting plants above sort of head height, you've got some challenges there with real plants because people don't want to get dripped on when you water them.
Yeah.
So fake plants, you want to think about your sustainability alongside this as well. So if you can get some really well-sourced, sustainable fake plants, then that's all good. You do get the benefits of, that reduced stress, that calmness. Yeah. However, there's a whole load more benefits that you get from real plants.
Oh, really? What are they?
So there's a sense of purifying the air. It's not massive because you tend to have really good sort of fresh air systems coming through and sorting that bit out itself. But there's an element of clearing up some of the toxins from your furniture and your flooring and stuff like that. So health benefits in that sense. But we're doing some research at the minute on relative humidity levels. So one of the biggest complaints that we get from people when we do our workplace studies is the temperature. Like people in open plan, it's hot, too cold. No one's ever happy because everyone's got a very different optimum temperature. However, we don't tend to look at humidity levels when we talk about the air quality. And this is something that we're looking at with doing a bit of an experiment in our own office with our mechanical and electrical engineers and our creative designers. We just want to see how plants can really impact the humidity levels and balance it out to the optimum level, where there's not really a solution to do with the mechanical and electrical at the minute.
And is the humidity level, like required humidity level for male and female, different, like the temperature is?
Don't believe so. There's kind of a 20% range that's optimum within relative humidity. And anything above that, you're feeling a bit sweaty, you're feeling a bit clammy. Anything below that, which it tends to be in an office, it sort of dries you out. So if you wear contact lenses, you'll feel really dry in your eyes. They'll get all itchy. Yeah. You might feel really thirsty. Your skin might feel all dry and horrible. And that, in turn, kind of then becomes a distraction from your productivity, your wellness. It can help spread flu and germs and disease, like things like that as well. So getting the optimum has a real impact. Not necessarily for gender, but across everyone. And we don't really tend to look at it too much in terms of air quality.
That's interesting. And often, like you touched on neurodiversity, which is really interesting. I always find that a really interesting topic. Often, I feel like the neurodiverse community are told to adapt to our neurotypical world, if you like. Yep. If it was the other way around and we had to adapt to a neurodiverse world, what would we be doing?
That is a really great question.
I just saw a picture the other day of like what it would look. I saw it's like infographic. It was really wicked, but it was what it would look like for a not disabled person to live in a disabled world. So like everything would be a little bit lower because like wheelchair users and stuff. Yeah. And I was just like, oh my goodness, like that. Like kind of quite hit home. Like those are stuff you take for granted. It's built for me. Everything is built for me basically because I'm just like a man and whatever in England. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And so I don't really see it. So what like challenges would I have? What if I was living in a world built for neurodiverse people? What would be different?
I think if a world was specifically built for the neurodivergent community with them in mind. You would thrive in it.
I would.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
I wouldn't struggle.
No. This is the thing. Any things that will support people. There's so many different factors to neurodivergence or neurodiversity, isn't there? You've got people with autism or ASD. When you think of the spectrum, people might think it's like a linear spectrum, like you're high or low in autism.
That's how I think.
It's sort of circular, and there's a whole load of different factors that you could experience. Hypersensitivity, which is where you're really sensitive to the stimulation around you. You could be really hyposensitive, where actually your baseline is really low and you want to go and seek a lot of stimulation and be in that busy, energetic space. That's it. So if you meet one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. There's, everyone is so different. So from a spectrum perspective, it's just vast, and you can't design one space that will suit everybody. And then you bring in Down syndrome, you bring in Tourette's, you bring in dyslexia, dyspraxia, ADHD, all of these different elements. You can't design one solution that fits everybody. So you need to add in so much variety. So you will find somewhere that works perfectly for you, because it's been created with such variety in mind, such diversity in mind. So it's likely that you would have a very calm aesthetic, which generally people are attracted to from a biophilic perspective. We're naturally attracted to nature. That's where we grew up. That's where 95% of our DNA plus was established. So we want that attraction to nature. So you will feel really good. And then you have these areas of where you are sensory seeking and you want to go and experience that dynamic energy. You'll have your pops of colour. You'll have all the imagery around you that's a bit more exciting and a bit more vivid. So whatever you need, you'll find. So you'll thrive. Everyone will thrive.
Because there's just so much. There's so many options.
Yeah, that will be really signposted really well, really clearly. It will be very intuitive. Yeah.
What else would be in this diverse world? Signpost, I hadn't really thought about that. That's a good point.
Signage is so important for so many people. But if we specifically look at ASD, autism, you want explicit instructions on where to go and where to get to. So just make it super clear. That's it, right?
Yeah. Like, I can see what you're saying when you say stuff is kind of quite obvious. It's not. Yeah, it is quite obvious.
Yeah. So the thing
not
is,
disrespectfully, but it's like, yeah, okay, like people want signage because they need instructions. I kind of configure that.
Yeah, exactly.
I haven't thought of it. That's strange, isn't it?
No. I wouldn't have a job otherwise.
That's true.
Because there's so many details that when you're a real creative, for example, so you might be a creative designer and you want to bring in this incredible concept, we just need to like dial back and just make sure all the basics are covered and then like go ahead. Yeah, so it's just that attention to detail.
And what are those basics? What are the things you're looking for when a creative person pitches to you? Like, what are you like? What are the common things that are missed?
So it's things like that orientation of the desk and something so simple. Wayfinding throughout, so signage, but also using lighting, for example, to sort of give you a route around the space that you can follow. Similar with the flooring and the carpets, making sure that you can, because the grey colour is the one that's sort of for your transient space that you're walking through. Your, green colour, just looking at the colour of your carpet here, is the space where you've got your work settings. You might have a different colour or a different pattern for your collaborative areas or your meeting rooms. So it's all very intuitive. We're just soaking that information without even realising it's there. We're looking at there's some booths where you can go and sit with your colleagues, little just like 4-person booths, but they've got a cutout for bringing in a wheelchair or somebody that's got an assistance dog, for example. They can sit in that little space. And speaking to some people who are wheelchair users, and you've got these little booths and you've got a table with a big table leg at the end, and they're forced to sort of wheel up and try and navigate that. And then they're sitting in a walkway and it's just not an enjoyable situation to be in, but why should they not have to have that environment and be able to access the environment? So you just create a little space for them that's made for these colleagues. And if no one's using it, you could bring a stool in, you could bring another chair in at any time, but it's just designing out those little real barriers. So small details. For me, it's not about, I wouldn't look at a design and say, oh no, you've gone completely wrong. It's about enhancements or little small tweaks where we can just take principles from psychology or real life, spatial theories and think, okay, let's just enhance this. Let's take it to the next level.
So I think we were even chatting the other day. It's so interesting how this world is made for like a very particular demographic. It's actually quite narrow as well, strangely.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And because it's so broad now, like so many.
It always was broad.
Yeah, true.
I would suggest, yeah. We've been made a lot more.
Are we just more aware of the broadness?
Aware, you probably were aware before, but wanted to maybe block out certain communities.
Yeah.
From the workplace or from the real world, basically. And just, like you said before, there was previously more of a medical model around disability and neurodiversity. For example, 100, 150 years ago, the term autism didn't exist, but the traits obviously existed, the people still existed. And a lot of the time it would get diagnosed as schizophrenia. And people would be put into asylums and that's where they'd spend their lives. And that's very much the medical model. So it's take them out of society because we don't want to change society to fit anybody that's got something different, a different need. Same with wheelchair users. It's up to them to sort of create a space to navigate life that we've created for a single demographic. Whereas you can then look at the more of a social model, which is all about, okay, actually, as a society, how can we tweak our spaces in line with universal design to support everybody. So that's probably a change that we saw sort of around the 50s, the 60s and the 70s. They were sort of quite important eras in terms of social change and progression. So really that was a point where in the States, they had a lot of people coming back from the Vietnam War, often got like injuries, maybe they lost limbs.
Yeah.
So that's when they started dropping curbs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so little things like that in terms of universal design. We could take loads of inspiration from urban design even.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And how does like return to work fit in all of this? Are we asking for people to come back to the office because we're wanting to like cling on to that old fashioned way of thinking? Or is that just basically a power hit, or is there a real reason? I know what I think, but that's from your perspective from a psychology.
It's such a complex question, right?
Well, and I think you're talking about the psychology of 2 lots of people at war. War? I don't know, that's probably
possibly
strong, but yeah, quite.
In some organisations, for sure.
Sometimes it is, right?
Yeah, so I think the thing that's been missing with all of these headlines that we're hearing from these big, powerful and influential organisations is change management, right? And for me, I quite like working from the office. So I'll work from the office 4 or 5 days a week unless I've got a reason to not be there. That's my default setting and I love it. And I don't work so well from home. However, if somebody told me you need to be in the office 5 days a week, my resistance is like going to shoot through the roof and I'm going to be like, I don't want it. No, because they've not given me a justification. They've just said, no, you're coming back 5 days a week. Whereas if there was some real analysis done on our outputs, on our performance, on our culture, the well-being of their staff, all of that, and then we got maybe consulted with as well. So somebody came and started asking us questions like how many days do you come to the office? What drives that decision, whether you're going to come in or not? Is it based on your diary? Is it based on just a rigid system that you've got? Have you built your life around whichever days you tend to come in or not? So we get consulted, and then they look at data around your outputs, performance as a business. And we were told, you know what? There's an element here that we're not mentoring our juniors. So we want everybody to come in a little bit more so that there's a lot more face-to-face and cross-pollination with different generations within the business, different departments, and we can build up that quality of connection. We've tweaked our workplace to facilitate this, so let's give it a go, and in 6 months' time, we'll see if there's been an improvement in those areas. And I'll be like, all for it. I'll probably be part of that, trying to collect all that information and analyse it, because it's
wow, I'm thinking
so
you should go to JP Morgan, you'd be wicked. They kind of need you, don't they?
They probably wouldn't want someone like me, to be fair. But if you're just told because somebody's decided, you know what, I'm nostalgic, I miss the being able to see people, or from a really sort of, probably from a perspective that I do believe is, we want to see you working. How do I know if you're working?
That's what people's problem is.
I think there's a likelihood there. And it's a very simple way to say, actually, I don't know if we're performing that well because I don't check my outputs except for the revenue. But it seems to me that we're missing something. And so let's get people back in so they can work harder, because it's likely that they'll be watching Netflix. There's no, I think that probably does happen, but I don't think there's any real justification to it.
Interesting, isn't it? Because I'm sure these people do want the best for their business. So what's the funny thing is everybody actually wants the same end goal. I kind of give everybody, I'm sure there is some outliers, but I'm sure everyone does actually want the same end goal. They all do want to do the best because they want to progress their career or develop the business or whatever that looks like. So we'll kind of do the same thing, but we've kind of got different ways of getting there, and it's kind of bringing everybody along the journey. I'm a massive believer in going in because I'm a massive believer in culture. Like, I really firmly believe in sort of company cultures can't be replaced, they can't be bought. It's a USP kind of to your brand and all that type of thing. But how do you measure culture? Do you know what I mean?
What is culture to you?
It's an energy. It's actually an energy in the room physically, or even outside of the room. Like, I could be walking down the street, but I've plugged into our culture, so I've got that kind of recharge, or that kind of brand connection or people connection, whatever that is. And I think when you're at home for periods of time, one-off days I'm very chilled about, but for like long periods, I think you just lose that.
Yeah. And that's obviously something that's really important to you. Some people might feel that culture is like, it's just a thing. I don't need to, I'm quite happy just getting on with my work. Could be working for anyone. I just want it. It's very transactional. I do my work.
I think it's important to everyone, whether they like it or not. I think it's important to everybody.
Yeah.
Whether they like it or not. It's like nature improves how you work. Culture is important, like to connect with the business. Do you know what I mean? That's how I feel.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to do I need to like think differently?
Potential. I'm always open to to try and understand in everybody's viewpoint. There might be everyone needs to feel a sense of belonging and connection, right? That's there. If you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, for example, it's kind of been disproven, or there's not loads and loads of theory to back it up. However, it's a really good kind of conversation point. And naturally, we do want to feel like we belong. That's like our baseline. Because in communities, you are safe, you're reproducing. If you go back to sort of caveman times, there's real benefits being in a group. However, some people do feel that connection through virtual interactions, especially the younger generations coming through. They might feel that sense of connection because they see each other on the screen. They might be working constantly on the screen, So I wouldn't say culture has to be in person. You can benefit from that energy virtually, thinking of other viewpoints. I'm probably more on your wavelength, to be fair. I'm just trying to picture.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that before, but it does kind of make sense because you get these influencers on TikTok and you've never met them for sure. And yet you do sort of feel like you know them. That's strange, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you saw them in the street, you would definitely chat to them, not as a first time, never met them person. You would be talking to them in a bit more of a broken down barriers.
Yeah, it's quite
it would be like a second or third meeting sort of thing.
I mean, they might be thinking something completely opposite.
Oh, they'll be completely confused because they've never met you, unless you're an influencer too. But
yeah.
Get my drift. So like maybe that's something that I've overlooked, that people can.
Bringing people, different personality traits, massive people that are right on the introverted scale of the introversion-extroversion scale might really not want to be around people, and actually isolation, excluding yourself from a situation where you're around other people, so you're choosing to be on your own, doesn't necessarily mean you're isolated and lonely. It might be a personal choice, and actually you've got a sense of belonging and connection to your family, so you've satisfied that need. But you lose a lot of energy if you're around people all the time. So, there are people who won't always feel that benefit of the energetic culture that you get from being in person.
And some people get really, like if a phone goes ping, ping, or a laptop or whatever, some people really hear that, don't they?
Yeah.
Like it's louder for them than it is for me, probably because I'm deaf, but also I'm sure it is like totally a thing that people are more sensitive.
Yeah. There's a hypersensitivity.
So what's that?
I'm pretty sure there's a term, I think it's called misophonia, something like that, where you're incredibly sensitive to noises and they're so disruptive. So the noise of people eating, I think most people can associate with that, like, it sort of just goes through you. But yeah, the sounds of people like typing away or coughing or something like that can be so distracting. And then how are you going to be productive? And the whole message about coming back to the office is to be productive, to be collaborative, but you're in a space where actually you're like, I'm so distracted, I cannot focus.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Is that like a typical trait of like that you've seen, like that kind of super sensitive to sound and light, etc.?
Particularly, again, neurodiversity. In autism, there can be, like say on that spectrum, one of the factors is that sort of hypersensitivity. So it could be part of neurodivergence, but it can also be somebody could just sort of experience this misophonia, or somebody's just hypersensitive. It's like just within their nature. I think it's relatively common.
So one of the tricks that companies are missing with this whole return to work thing is pretty much change management.
Oh, yeah.
It's so basic.
Right.
Yeah?
It's so basic. Even if you were going to do it for in my opinion, all the wrong reasons, you can manage that change. You can give people notice. You don't say, we'll take your lack of presence as a resignation. You can understand people's views and I think there's probably a lot of organisations doing it well, but they're not making headlines.
Yeah,
because
no
it's not
drama to it, is
clickbait.
there?
Yeah, there's no drama.
I do agree. The news is a nightmare.
Yeah, exactly. And even beyond the headlines that do come out, I think that these organisations probably some of them are doing a better job than it's coming across. I think that actually there isn't always a one-size-fits-all. Their mandate might be a blanket statement that is your default, but actually if you do have caring responsibilities, you might fall into a different bracket and it's looked at in a more of a one-to-one or team-level basis. So there might be some discretion there to help different types of people with different needs. I think that the clickbait and the fear that's been instilled in people now is very much just that clickbait.
Yeah, no, it is totally. When I read it, I'm like, how true is it anyway? I can't even believe anything.
Exactly.
I find I don't ever look at the news. I find I get more information talking to people like you and actually hearing real life stories. Have you ever had someone in your experience in the last 2 years, everyone must be in the office 5 days a week?
I've not, no.
And you're like workplace consultant.
Every single person.
Really? I find it strange, do you know what I mean? And if I was hearing that from you all the time, this is a really common problem, instead of just 3 headlines in the news, it's kind of more where I get my vibe from of what's actually happening in the real world, because I know it's...
Feet on the ground.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's actually unfiltered as well, it's true.
Yeah. You know what? We're not seeing it too much with our clients, these big mandates. A lot of organisations, that it's rocking the boat a bit and people are questioning it and got lots of opinions at the top and the bottom, but they're trying to talk it out, they're trying to debate it and see what's best for their organisation.
So they're going through this change management piece.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I do think everyone was forced into this whole experiment of work from home, right? A lot of people have never worked from home in the past, and tech needed to evolve really quickly to facilitate that. Cultures needed to facilitate. And if you think about a lot of organisations, ours in particular, the culture really thrived in lockdown when we weren't seeing each other. We've got a smaller office in Bristol, we're based in Warrington, and we've never been more connected because it very much leveled the playing field. We were doing quizzes, we were doing all of those coffee chats that you might get from the office, we were very intentionally doing virtually. So there's an issue there that if you really want to have a virtual culture, you need to do it intentionally. You can't just expect it to happen, which may happen when you're actually in the workplace. It kind of defaults.
That is interesting, because I do remember in lockdown we had a right laugh and we actually almost got to know people a bit better.
Yeah, because you saw the houses.
You saw their houses, even if it was just a wall. But
the kids, the dog.
Yeah, and you just, because we were at home, it kind of just psychologically, look at me, psychologist, we dropped our guard in what we spoke about or something, I think.
Probably.
I don't really know.
Barriers dropped. Remembering that we were in a position where we couldn't go and meet our friends as well, so we were getting a lot of that social connection from work, I suppose, which maybe we wouldn't normally. You could fill that cup with friends as well. But I do think that the value in those social connections that we realised when we were connecting via the airwaves has now been brought into the office, and such a big driver of workplace design is those areas that foster connection, meaningful connection, not just you're right, mate. Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah. And what are those spaces?
They could be lots of different types of spaces. So naturally, it's your kitchen area. If you're having a party or something, lots of people just gravitate to your kitchen space because you just stand around, it's close to the drinks. It's somewhere that people naturally go to. So creating that social environment within your sort of kitchen area, maybe you build a kitchen island that people can just stand around in the workplace. So really making a focus of that space and not just making it feel like a school canteen. Take away the branding. You can do it softly, but take away the explicit branding, just make it a really nice place of connection. Then you also might think the print room, somewhere that you're just kind of standing around, your printing space. That's a place to just catch up with people maybe, if you just both happen to be in there. Previously, it was your smoking shelter. that still might be it, but that's somewhere again that you're standing around and you're catching up with people and you're having a conversation. So all these little spaces throughout where you do just have a bit of a touch point, anywhere that you might have your big social space that you've really considered there, but you've also got a little tea point, which might have a coffee machine. It might have something small where you can just get your fresh refreshments again. Pop in a little like ad hoc seating space. So if you do meet somebody there and have that conversation, have a chat, whether it's work related, whether it's social related, and just like carry on that chat.
Yeah, I think it's important to almost like design in those bottlenecks where people will like pinch points, where people will like end up landing. And then I think also like just hearing you talking about the big kitchen space where the drinks are, like I think it's really important to also, going back to the whole neurodivergent thing, is having the spaces where they can maybe like hover on the outskirts.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a drinker, alcohol-wise, drink water. But, and I actually feel I've got better at it, but I still do feel quite awkward not drinking. I feel like kind of I'm should be.
Yeah.
And like it's like a pressure to, but I don't for health reasons, and I haven't got an alcohol problem at all. But you almost feel like you're branded with that. So you kind of drink to almost prove them wrong.
Got it.
I don't know,
Yeah.
you go into this whole like spinning circle.
Oh, like
it's so stupid.
The social pressures, right?
Yeah. And it's actually, I'm a really social person. I love like milling around chatting with people, but I kind of end up like kind of hovering back a bit while the drinks are all going because, and I want to quietly get my alcohol-free beer. So I like fit in with everybody. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, fully.
And so those kind of allowing for those people to like hover and observe, I guess that's who I am.
Yeah.
Until I'm ready. It's kind of like, I think that's a really nice thing as well. And making it really obvious. Again, let's go back to signposting, but I always like, I want it to be really obvious that there's no alcohol options because I don't want to go up so you can have an alcohol-free beer. And so I want it to be like, you what?
Yeah.
I just want it to given it as fast as possible, just like as if you were asking for a normal beer. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So
no
I don't want there
questions
to be any frictions.
Why is it a thing? So this barrier that you're feeling is, you know, back to that question you asked about what would a neurodivergent, what would it look like if the world was designed for neurodiversity? This is like, what would the world look like if it was designed for alcohol-free drinking?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're in that periphery of the experience and you want it to be like, no, create a space that works for me as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you might have signposting. Ideally, you just get to a culture where it doesn't matter at all. No one raises an eyebrow.
Yeah, that is true. Like because I mean, I've been in many situations where I ask for an alcohol-free drink and they're like, come on guys, seriously. And I'm like, and they're good friends as well, like no dicks, but like, that's what you
They're like,
get.
just have fun.
Yeah, like let your head, whatever.
Yeah.
You don't need to worry about your weight that much or whatever it might be. And it's all in good jest and it's good fun and I'm fine with it. But at the same time, like you might be, like I can't be bothered to explain myself.
These are small little microaggressions in a sense, and they're not coming across like maliciously to you, but it's exhausting dealing with it all the time. And you might have to then think before you go to somewhere like this, like, oh, what's my reasoning going to be? What am I going to do? Like, do I just have a drink to fit in? Which you don't want to do. You don't want to succumb to the pressure, like, why should you? So, I mean, it's great that there's so many options around and things like, you know, getting, oh my God, Punk AF, for example.
Yeah.
You know, you're not saying can I have an alcohol-free beer?
No, there is so much now available.
Yeah.
It is good.
But it's, I mean, hopefully if you're designing your office space, you're not just thinking about booze in that kitchen, right?
Maybe not.
So, but if you take your example of, you know, feeling cautious about those interactions.
Yeah.
In the workplace, if it's quite busy in that environment, maybe you've got food on, maybe you've got, it's just a bottleneck time, it's lunchtime, people are all in that space and you don't feel comfortable in big groups. So you kind of want to hold out until it's a little bit quieter. Or you don't want to socialise in the big group because actually coming into the office is stressful enough and drains enough of your energy that you just want to recuperate a bit of that when you're in that, having your break. Yeah, it's all about social inclusion. So create, you know, you might have your big benches for your big groups that do want to catch up, but you've got small little pockets of seating that's for one or two people. It might be looking outside. It might be, you know, behind a bit of a visual barrier so you can get your little retreat space and feel the energy around you, but not necessarily interact with it yourself if you don't want to.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I have got another question I want to ask before I wrap up because time's ticking. But you had I loved your backstory, like how you got into psychology. I thought it was really cool. And now you're doing it from like an organisational consultancy perspective, which is really great. And you've done that for 8 years. What is one thing that has happened in that time frame that you've really changed your mind about, that you used to think X, but now you think like Y?
Great question. So I think that we previously thought a workplace, it was passive. It was somewhere that you went to work. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I suppose my experience has been propelled through with a, like I say, that great experiment of working from home. And now the purpose of the workplace has changed whilst I've been on that sort of journey. So before we might look at people to desk ratios based on, sickness, or if they're out of the office seeing clients or something. So you don't need one person for every desk, because actually maybe the ratio is 10 people for every 8 desks. It's something that was, just assumed everyone would be in unless they were off sick or out seeing a client. Now, it's not that passive place that everyone just goes to. It's a real purposeful destination that people go to. And this has been a massive change. So instead of just getting a brief that's like, we need X desks, X meeting rooms, X amount of seats in the kitchen, it's what's the purpose of your office? What's changed? Like, what's that motivating factor that people are coming in? And how do we design to instill that? If it's culture, talk to me about your culture. Let's understand it. Let's understand where you'd like that to go and how we can help you get there. Kind of manufacture the space to support an organic progression into that culture. So I think the whole purpose of the office has changed. And that's like a massive change.
Yeah, no, I have this favourite saying I love saying to people, but like, since when was work a place that we go to, not a thing we do?
Yeah.
It's like, you don't school, you educate or lessons or learn or whatever. Yeah. Like, you go to school, it's a place you go to and get it, or you shops and then you buy things or whatever. But yeah, since when was work a thing that we go to?
And it's such a new, I bet maybe you did 10 years ago think about that, but it's been such a shift in mindset that a lot of people are now thinking like, hang on a minute, why did we just sleepwalk into that world?
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's come from, I could talk to you for ages about like the progression of the office over the last 200 years, for example, but it used to be around manufacturing and production. So you had a manager that would be on the mezzanine looking out over their factory. And now we sort of, like I say, have sort of sleptwalked through to, still 9 to 5. That was brought in by Henry Ford, I believe, like in the early 1900s, arbitrarily, but based around, just because that was where they would get their production. That was their production time. But we've now moved into the knowledge economy, where actually just is time what we should be basing our work and outputs on, or is it the actual outputs and the quality of that? And I think that question has been asked a lot more in the last 5 years than probably the last 200.
Yeah, interesting. Oh, it's so, yeah, like you say, there's so much we can talk about.
Isn't there?
Time is ticking on. Before we go, what is one book or podcast that you have read or listened to that you recommend that I listen to?
I think I'd get absolutely beaten if I didn't say The Workplace Geeks.
Okay.
Like, brilliant podcast, all about bringing research and academic studies around sort of different elements of the workplace, talking all about that data side, so you get the source of the information, but hosted by Chris and Ian, and they're just brilliant. So yeah, give that a listen.
Okay, wicked. Thank you so much, Becky. I could literally go on,
Yeah.
I've just got so many questions. I just find this whole how people move and interact and behave and don't behave or whatever.
Yeah, that's the more exciting bit.
It's so interesting. And it's like we can change it all just by how we design spaces or don't design spaces or include or lighting or wayfinding and all these great things you pointed out. And then I'm almost, as I was listening to you, I was almost thinking I'm really picking up that whole drink thing and the noises and I'm thinking, oh, actually, I'm seeing myself here a little bit. And this is cool. So really eye-opening. A great chat. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.